They struck in the dead of night, and Russia's fuel lifeline went dark. This operation has triggered a total redesign of the Kremlin's economic strategy. On June 10, 2026, Ukrainian drones penetrated 900 kilometers into Russian territory. Their target was the Rosneft Kuibyshev oil refinery, a massive facility responsible for a significant share of Russia's fuel output. Before we look at the exact details of this strike, make sure to subscribe to the Global Warwatch network for more clear, precise analysis on global conflicts. The attack homed in on the facility's primary crude distillation units, known as CDU4 and CDU5. These towering structures performed the initial thermal separation of crude oil into usable fractions, like gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil. The direct impacts and subsequent fires completely disabled both units. Without them, 146,000 barrels of daily processing capacity evaporated instantly, forcing the entire plant into an emergency shutdown. Rebuilding these units requires highly specialized fractionating columns and computerized control systems. Western sanctions have completely cut Russian operators off from those suppliers. Because they have to scavenge and cannibalize parts, the repair window for these facilities has stretched from weeks to many months. Kuibyshev was the last facility standing in its region. In the weeks prior to this strike, long-range drones successfully knocked the nearby Syzran and Novokuibishev's refineries completely offline. The destruction of Kuibyshev erased the final functioning node of the Samara refining hub. Russian military units operating in western and southern Russia can no longer rely on this local network for direct fuel supply. It created a massive, unfillable logistics vacuum. To protect the infrastructure that survives, Russian operators are building improvised physical barriers around their equipment, colloquially known as cope cages. This diagram shows the specific mechanics of these passive defenses. Engineers suspend a dense network of 8mm steel cables exactly 60 centimeters apart over vulnerable processing buildings and fuel tanks, attempting to physically block incoming threats. These nets can occasionally catch small quadcopters. However, they consistently shear and collapse under the kinetic energy and blast overpressure of heavy, long-range strike drones carrying substantial payloads. Faced with failing passive defenses and an overstretched military, the Kremlin responded by rewriting its defense laws, officially authorizing private and state-owned corporations to independently purchase military-grade air defense systems. State oil giant Rosneft utilized this new authority immediately. They used heavy transport helicopters to airlift a next-generation missile system directly onto the roof of the Nordstar Tower in Moscow, their own headquarters. The corporations do not gain independent control over these weapons. The Russian military retains full operational command and mans the systems with reservist units. But the industrial players are legally forced to absorb the massive procurement and installation costs. The persistent drone campaign has forced the Kremlin to shift the financial and administrative burden of air defense onto the private sector, essentially charging the domestic economy for its own protection. That domestic economy is already fracturing under the stress of the refining collapse. Within 5 days in early June, the number of Russian regions officially experiencing gasoline shortages jumped from 15 to 25. These localized supply shocks triggered extreme price inflation. In occupied Crimea, the black market rate for a single liter of gasoline reached $2.08, nearly double the official price in Moscow. Russia's budget relies on high-margin refined exports. With refineries destroyed, they must export raw crude. Subject to the G7 price cap, crude sells at a massive discount. In 2026, oil revenues plummeted 30%, and the deficit soared 98% to 6 trillion rubles. The Ukrainian drone strikes target the core mechanics of the Russian economy. They are a calculated mechanism designed to systematically dismantle the tax revenue architecture of the Russian federal budget. To prevent a total breakdown of the retail fuel market, the Kremlin deploys desperate financial countermeasures. The government is draining its federal reserves to heavily subsidize emergency gasoline imports from China and Belarus. They are also weighing extreme environmental and public health risks. The Russian Energy Ministry is pushing to re-legalize monomethyl-aniline, a highly toxic, cancer-causing fuel additive that was explicitly banned in 2016. Subsidizing foreign fuel and introducing known carcinogens to the domestic supply are unsustainable stopgaps. They are the clear indicators of a logistical system reaching its breaking point. The strike on the Kuibyshev refinery systematically neutralized a critical industrial node. By choking off refined fuel supplies and forcing the discounted export of raw crude, the long-range campaign is successfully dismantling the fiscal model that sustains the Russian war effort. Thank you everyone for your time and for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the Global Warwatch Network. We want to hear your thoughts on these defensive shifts. Ask your questions or share your thoughts in the comments section below, and be sure to join us on social media. The links are provided in the description. See you next time.